My esteemed friends, what are some strange things you found in classic video games? Could there be an Easter egg reference to a Nintendo 64 classic in Call of Duty Modern Warfare? What about some in-game cheats and codes that can only keep us pondering 30 years later? Well, it's about that time to prepare a warm beverage, or cold one if you prefer, and get comfy, because here are some strange Easter eggs, oddities, and just other things I found interesting in Nintendo 64 video games or referencing these games.
Here we go!
Here's a very strange Easter egg found by a keen-eyed viewer. Not in a Nintendo 64 game, but certainly an homage or something to one. So we all know Valentin Zukovsky, right? You know, the former KGB agent who becomes a sort of ally affiliate of James Bond in both GoldenEye and The World Is Not Enough, in both the movies and video games. In the movies, he was played by the late, great Robbie Coltrane, who also played Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies, a truly iconic legend. Now, of course, Valentin in the Bond universe is involved in organized crime, and so he also needs legitimate businesses to cover for such activity. One of these businesses is a caviar hatchery, apparently somewhere off the coast of Azerbaijan in the Caspian Sea. Thank God for the hatchery. And this is where 2 levels in The World Is Not Enough, or Twine, take place. The City of Walkways Part 1 and Part 2. So alright, that's all good and dandy. Now on this stage, we can indeed see sort of logos and branding for Valentin's caviar operation. And usually this would just be some kind of incidental imagery, not a huge deal. There's actually a very brief scene from the movie where we also see this kind of logo. Valentin goes to fix it like a crooked painting, not yet knowing that Bond has snuck in to carry onwards with his mission. And we can presume that, just like with the game and movie GoldenEye, the developers of Twine probably used the movie set as a reference to build the stages in the game, including some of these finer details. And yeah, throughout the level we'll find many uses of this Valentin caviar signage and logo, whether it be on boxes of presumably caviar or buildings or whatever the case may be. Okay, wonderful. Now here is where this gets truly unusual. I mean, really. So there's this whole other video game series called Call of Duty. Okay, I'm being a bit facetious, but yeah, Call of Duty, you know it. So Call of Duty really came into its own as a series by the time we got to about Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. It was at this point where the game was just sort of beyond just a typical FPS multiplayer shooter and really started taking on a life of its own as this kind of mega franchise. And so Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is one of the most influential games of the era, maybe of all time. Just the embodiment of that pure Xbox gamer type of Mountain Dew, Doritos, Taco Bell, Baja Blast, the kind of gamer I'm talking about. And I say that only affectionately, only endearingly, and not at all pejoratively, really. So would you believe it if there was a Twine Easter egg in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, or a Valentin Zukovsky Easter egg, no less? Act 3, Mission 12, The Safe House, is some kind of stealthy, snowy mission taking place in the backwoods of Russia. I never played the game, so I'm just spitballing here, but that's what I've gathered. And what this viewer sent me, a fellow by the name of MattSwizzle, he came across this. The bar in this mission, from a game released in 2007, a super influential game nonetheless, is signed with the exact same Valentin logo from The World Is Not Enough. Well, maybe not the exact same, but close enough. It's still very clearly Valentin, and even has the same color scheme and all. It looks maybe like slightly stretched or altered around the chin a bit, but the text above it in the Call of Duty game even says Zukovsky, so it's very clearly Zukovsky, the same logo texture, and yeah, it's supposed to be him, Zukovsky's Bar and Grill. The Cyrillic text here translates to something like bar and grill, which is kind of funny. It makes me think of Outback Steakhouse or Applebee's, or in Canada we have Jack Astor's or Kelsey's. But I mean, it's in a snowy, small Russian village, so it's not quite the same. But either way, it is the same Valentin logo and signage. Apparently this is also in the remastered version of Modern Warfare released in 2016 as well. Now I guess this is one of those things you might either think, wow, that's crazy, or maybe just, neat, or maybe you think this is pointless. But it does make me ponder, how did it get there? Does anyone know it's there? Not to tattle or anything, but it's crazy to think that even the remaster is 10 years old now, and the original Modern Warfare is nearly 20 years old, and the Bond games and movies are almost 30-ish years old. Now, to be clear, as far as I know, Valentin Zukovsky is not in the Call of Duty series. That'd be one heck of a crossover. So my best guess is simply that either someone worked on both Twine and Modern Warfare and used the asset here as a sort of funny thing to sneak in, as game developers sometimes do, or possibly Valentin's face logo ended up in some kind of asset repository, and when the developers of Modern Warfare were looking for a Russian-ish face logo asset to use for their bar and grill setting, they stumbled across it, placed it here without knowing or looking into it too deeply, and there it sat for 20 years before being brought to my attention, and perhaps really the attention of anyone. I've never heard this mentioned before, and the guy who sent it to me, MattSwizzle, claims that he has never seen anyone else discuss it on the internet, which I kind of believe, and I've looked around and not seen it as well. I mean, have any of you guys played Modern Warfare? Did you notice this Valentin Zukovsky Easter egg in the game? Because yeah, it really is quite the odd thing to come across. I tried parsing through the credits of both games to see if there was any crossover, but couldn't really see anything. There are lots of names to follow in the credits. One thing that is worth noting is that the developers of Twine, Eurocom, did have some of their later games published by Activision, who also published Call of Duty. So could there have been some asset sharing pooled through these game developments? Possibly the case. And it really is one of those fitting things, because GoldenEye was certainly among the most influential first-person shooters with its multiplayer mode and moving through 3D worlds, completing objectives, and so on, and Call of Duty is very clearly one of the most influential first-person shooter series of all times. Again, I can't speak as to exactly why, as I've never played a single Call of Duty game in my life, but certainly this series is the most influential, or among them, and especially Call of Duty Modern Warfare is right up there as one of the games that kind of gave this series its breaking point into true mainstream iconicism. Should I play these games? Genuinely tell me. I would love to hear any reasons for it and what makes it so influential and significant. I mean, they clearly just are. And when I think of Call of Duty, I think of guys like our pal Darklight93 and eating Doritos and just bragging about how good they are at video games, right in the sweet spot of the golden age of the internet. Before anyone knew or believed that you could actually make something of your life by playing video games and making video game content, when it was still sort of seen as a kind of backrooms, degen activity, yet these guys in many ways would turn out to be right in the years to come. But hey, there's the Valentin restaurant Easter egg in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Truly remarkable. Okay, here's something I want to talk about an obscure code in Diddy Kong Racing that I feel should have been much more prominently known. So Diddy Kong Racing is home to one of the least used features, hidden behind an in-game code that only has about a 1 in 25 chance of appearing after you beat the game, but it really should have been a major selling point. Diddy Kong Racing is a truly great game. It's like Mario Kart 64, but maybe even better, at least in some ways. The exact driving mechanics and item usage might be a bit less satisfying, but the adventure mode is one heck of a journey, driving around Timber Island, exploring, unlocking new courses and areas. But let's say you complete the game for the first time. You beat Wizpig and get the credits to roll. At the very end of the credits, there will be a single code revealed to you, which has some in-game effect. For example, the code Arnold makes all the players a little bit larger, a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I actually played some footage here with the opposite code, Teeny Weenies, which makes the characters much smaller. I was just trying to complete an old file I had in the Future Funland zone. I figured making the guys smaller would have less things to bump into. So yeah, other codes do things like change all the balloons to a certain type of item, or just, minor cosmetic changes to the game. However, one code, Joint Venture, really changes the game completely, allowing you to play the entire adventure mode as a 2-player adventure. I mean, check this out, driving around Timber Island as Diddy Kong, with my partner here, Crunch, in the top right, showing he's in the game. And when I enter a race, it's now a 2-player race. And there are only 6 total racers, making it quite a bit easier to win that solo player adventure. Or in this case, a dual player adventure. You just get to enjoy the adventure game with a companion, which is awesome. And really this should have been promoted as a main feature of the game rather than a bonus mode, which you could only conventionally find out by beating WizPig numerous times to see all the codes at the end of the credits. I can only ponder how much fun was missed out on by people never knowing about this mode. You know, maybe it was added late in development, or it wasn't promoted because it would make the adventure too easy, you know, with fewer opponents on the course. But it would have been such a great way to play the game with, you know, especially like a younger sibling or cousin who might be less competent at video games, but could still feel like they're participating somehow while you're able to progress through the world, winning the gold balloons, making it all a little bit easier to boot. Did you know of this legendary joint venture mode in Diddy Kong Racing? Like, let me know if you knew about this or played this mode with your brother or cousin or friend back in the day. I'd be genuinely surprised to hear if anyone has done so. I wanted to follow up on a pondering from a couple videos ago about strange teams in Kobe Bryant's NBA Courtside. The brief story was that a young guy was playing the game with his father when the power went out. His dad went to sleep, but he stayed awake until the power was restored and then went to play some more NBA Courtside. When he turned on the game, 2 mysterious teams with weird logos and characters who he had never seen before were playable options, and this was just all very odd and strange. So I looked into this a bit further, searching to see if there was some kind of maybe debug mode, or perhaps 2 new teams or test teams could show up. This was a suggestion by some in the comments and seemed worth looking into. I didn't quite end up finding anything like that, but I did find some interesting bonus teams. If you press L and A at the main menu, you unlock 3 new bonus teams. The logos look like this: the N64 logo, the standard Nintendo logo, and the Left Field Productions logo, the developers of this game. On that Left Field team, we can find players named for or created after the actual developers of the game. You know, this is exactly the kind of way many devs put themselves in games from this era. You know, it really is a bonus deep-cut side thing that doesn't interfere with general gameplay, and very few would know or find out about it. The team names are funny too. The Left Field Lefties, the Nintendo Gamers, and the Nintendo Plumbers, of course with the latter referencing Mario's presumed occupation as a plumber. Is it possible that our writer and Strange Glitch experiencer actually ended up seeing these teams? I know he wrote initially that he witnessed 2 strange teams after his thunderstorm and power outage. Could it have been these teams? I know it's 3 of them, but maybe he unknowingly pressed L and A when starting up his game out of excitement, sneaking back to the TV for a late video game. Now I know this doesn't quite match his initial story as told, but these additional Easter egg teams are quite an interesting and unique thing to find in such an old video game. I know it's not some mega secret or anything, but it's surely been quite a bit forgotten in the time since. Did you ever play around with these teams in Kobe Bryant's NBA Courtside? Do you know of any other game with secret developer inserts like this? Let me know if you do. A huge thanks for watching, and to all the Patreon supporters and channel members for your support of my work. Stay true, my friends, and I'll see you in the next stream or video.